Welcome back to Learning Partner. So in this video, we are going to cover another mini project idea that will be a budget tracker application. So whenever we talk about a budget tracker application, what we should have, like what are my incomes, what are my expenses, a dashboard where I can see my total budgets, my expenditure and everything, right? So we are going to do this project in Angular 17, again with API. APIs are free. You will be able to access it. You can get the API on project api.jirasim.in. Here you will get the Swagger and you can use the API. Modules will be like login and registration, dashboard module, income, and the expenses. Why login and registration? So we are considering this, we are creating this application as a product. So if anyone wants to use this budget tracker, they will be able to register, they can log in and they can see their own data. Correct. So whenever we talk about the product is like that, we can register and we can use that product. So keeping in that mind, we are going to design this application. So here are the APIs. You can see budget planners APIs are there. This is the UI. This UI is already over there in my YouTube repository for GitHub project template. So dashboard is about this. Then we have expenses. On click of add new, we will be able to add it. And just like income also on click of add, we will add it. In income, we are using card to show the data. And in expense, we are using the tabular format. And in dashboard, we are just going to show the statistic kind of data. This also will come from the API. Correct. Now, the basic setup I have done, I have created an Angular 17 project. So, and again, it's with a new thing, new architecture. We don't get app module. We have app config. I have created a dashboard component. Whatever the UI I had created, that I have already copy pasted, just the HTML part. Whatever the expense UI, I have copy pasted it over here. Income also. Just two extra component I have created, login and home component and layout component. So layout component is the thing where we are going to have the navbar, correct? And once user is not logged in, we will be able to show the login page. So for that, let's create the route. So after I have just created the component, so let's start it with the routes. So here you can see I have created 3 routes. First is the empty path, means this is for default route. So if we don't have anything in the URL, it will redirect to the login route. So this is the login route and this is the home component. Now, instead of what we can say, instead of creating home component like this, what I will do, I will create a empty route. And for that component will be layout, because in layout component, I have put my navbar. And remaining components, line means after login, whatever the pages I'm going to access, that will be children of this home layout component. So this home component will go over here. Okay. So let's save all. Let's check if we are able to see the login page properly. So here you can see we are able to see the login page. Now the login page, again, I have got this from the code pen only. I didn't created it myself. So we have this functionality. Now on click of it, if I click on the sign up, I should be able to do the sign up form. So let's go to login component. So here you can see we have these buttons, labels, which are allows us to slide. Then we have this login form and this sign up form. So let's create a variable is login with Boolean. By default, we will say true. Now this variable, we will use it to hide and show this. So star ng if. Now I will talk about Angular 17 new things also. So in Angular 17, if you have to use structural directive, you have to import common module. So here you can see we cannot use that. We have to import the common module. But there is new thing, that is control flow statement. So we have to use @if, and you can pass the condition. So if this variable is true, then this form will be loaded, rendered, and else to that. So with the @else. So if that variable is false, our sign up form will be rendered like this. Now let's check it if we are able to do that. So by default, this variable is true. So you can see login form is visible. Let's try to change that with false. So here you can see sign up page is visible, just like that. Now we just need to toggle the value of this on this label click. So here, let's write a click event. And simply we have to change the variable value. So I will just simply do it over here is equal to true. And on click of sign up, we need to make it false. That's it. But sign up button was not visible. Now let's check why. Because of submit. Let's check. So now on button click, we should be able to do the vice versa thing. Okay, it's not why it started. It stopped that animation somehow. Didn't do it. Okay, because of this might be because I have copy pasted this from the CSS. With CSS, something might be there, which was happening that. So let it be. We are not going to focus on that. Now, so sign up page is also visible. On click of login, login is also visible. Now, first we need to do the registration thing. So registration thing like add user API is there, which we need to integrate. So this is the object. So let's quickly create that object. Register :any. Whatever is string, I will replace that with empty. Correct. Create a date. I will send the default date. That will be new date. So we have created object there. Now this object we have to bind to our form also. Now in Angular older version, when we have to use the ng model, we used to add forms module. But here we don't have app module. So but in component only we have the imports. So here you need to add forms module. Then you can use ng model. So what things are there in register? We are not going to use everything. What we can say username, email ID, and full name. Role is not necessary because this user I'm going to make useful for all the project. That's why I have created some extra things also. So username, email ID, full name, and password. Just 4 fields we are going to create. So this was email address, password. We need 2 more things. Username. And first will be, let's say, full name. Let's bind this. Now we have this input text box inside a form tag. So whenever we use ng model inside a form tag, name attribute also get mandatory, right? Otherwise we will get the error. Ng model. Try to use the HTML provided and start coding like that. Don't try to waste the time while using the uh, try to create the UI because functionality is what we need should be focused on. Let's just copy paste and then we will change the variable name, properties name. This will be password. Copy paste. Then we have email ID. It will go over here. And last one is username. Username will go over here. User ID is the primary key. So by default, we send it as a 0. Now we need to make the API call. So ideally, when we have to call when we need to integrate an API, you can do that API integration from component as well. But standard way of programming, like we should keep our API call into service so that our component will have a less code. So in outside, I will create a folder that will be services. And in this service, I will create a service. Right click on new terminal. Ng generate service. I will just simply name it as a master. It's a small application so I will only go with the single service. You can create multiple service also based on the module, but I'm just sticking it to single service. Now in this service, first like we have to use the HTTP client model. So private HTTP HTTP client. Now, if you remember, like in Angular older version, we had to import the HTTP client model. Now we don't have that. So there is another way. So app config is there, right? So here you can add provide HTTP client like this. So this is equivalent to HTTP client, what we used to add in the import section. That's it. Now you can make use of the HTTP client. Let's create the service. Create user round bracket curly bracket enter. So this dot HTTP dot post method. And we will get the object. So obj :any Then our URL, let's get the URL, write out, execute. So this is going to be my URL. So let's copy. Now everywhere in all the API call function, this is going to be my common part. Just the method name is going to change. So rather than writing it over and over again, I will put that in a single variable. API URL colon string equal to whatever the value. Now instead of passing this URL everywhere, what I will do, let's make the use of template literal. This dot API URL, and this will be at the end. That's it. So this is like a concatenation we have done. Then it's the post API call, so we have to pass URL and the object also. Object we are going to get in the parameter, so this will go over here. And whatever the response we get, that we are going to return, just like that. Our service function call is ready. Now this we have to call in our login component. So here again, now new thing in Angular 17. It's not in new thing from Angular 17. It is there from Angular 16. So this is the traditional way how we used to create the service object by using dependency injection, providing the object in the constructor. But there is a new thing also. So in the login, we will try that. So after variable declaration, now I have to create an instance of master service. So what I will do, master service, just like a variable declaration is equal to, and we can make use of the inject. And for inject, we have to pass the master service class name. So now this is equivalent to this, how we used to create the injectable service object. So always now, from now on, whenever you are working, try to make the use of new things so that you will be familiar, because you don't have to prepare extra things when you are appearing for the interview. If you are using those things daily, so you will be more confident, correct? So master service object is created. Let's create a function, create user. Now from this function, again, we are going to call the master service dot create user API call function. Here we have to pass the object, that is register, and we need to subscribe because that function is going to return the data type of observable. So we can subscribe result colon any. Now all my API will return the data type of three properties. It will return a three object, message, result, and data. So result is the property which you need to watch out for. This will decide like the API call was success or not. So here res dot result. If it is true, we will get to know like API call was success and user got created. So we will show just the message user created. And in else, if result property came false, we will get the error in the message property only. So alert. And here res dot message. Whatever the message you get from the API, that only you need to display. And this function we have to call on the register button. That will be sign up, nothing but. Oh, we did something wrong. Like, so in login form, actually, we have designed that. So let's just copy this. Let's paste it over here. Action, we don't need it. Let's input type submit is there. Let's make it button. We don't need submit. So input type button, on click of button, we are going to call this function. So let's add a debugger also. Whenever you are writing the code for the first time, always try to debug, check what is the data you are getting, what you are passing. It will cover the unit testing as well. Now, because we made that input type submit to input type button, let's check the CSS. If we submit, yeah, let's make it button. Yeah, so now text is visible. Now, I'm just going to create a user with Rahul name. Email address, let's say rahul@gmail.com. Let's try username, let's say Rahul only. Password 111222. 111222 is the password what I am providing. Let's click on the submit. So once we click, you can see our function got called. And in the register object, you can see the object. The role we have set empty, user ID will be 0, remaining things we have got. Let's add a debugger in the service also, master service. This is the function which we are calling. And while calling this function, we are passing the object. So once I continue, here you can see, here we have got the object. And this from here, actually API call will be merged. Let's continue. We have got error. Why we have got course error? I have added the thing. It's a post API only. Why we got the error? Let me just check quickly. What is it? What I have added it over here? Photo 09 I have added. And on the controller level also I have added allow for region. But why it is giving error? Let me just quickly check. Sorry, so I didn't pay attention. You can see here slash forward slash is missing. So URL was incorrect. That's why we are getting that error. So let's correct that. Because in master service here, you can see we have added up till now only. So forward slash was missing. Let's try again. Then our API call will be success. Let's say Rahul @gmail.com. Username Rahul only. Password 111222. Let's click on submit. Continue. Continue. So now you can see we have got the object and the result property. We got the result as true. We continue. Now let's try submit it again with the same credential, whatever the object we have passed. Continue. Continue. So now here you can say result property we have got false because username is something unique which I have kept in the backend. So if you pass, so as I have explained earlier, result is a property you need to watch out for, because if the result property is false means some error was there in the API side, and you will get whatever the error or the warning is there, you will get it in the message property. Now it will go to the else block and you will show the warning like username already exists. Please choose another like that. Now sign up is done. Now we have to complete the login thing. Now for login, we just need to send username and the password. So let's create this object as well. Again, let's go to login component, login obj, :any. Let's remove this. Now, so here, this is a login form. So here we don't need full name. We just need a username and the password. So only two things we will keep it over here. And on click of login, again, we need to create one more service call. So go in master service, just like this. Again, it is a post API also. Login user. It will be, instead of method will be login. Now this function we have to call in our component. So just like this, now I will copy paste because I have already explained how we write this. Now I will just copy paste on login. And here we have to call the login function. And instead of register, we need to pass the login object. User login. User. We don't need to show the alert. Now this function we need to call on the button click. So this is the button click. So click event function. Instead of submit, let's make it button. And instead of register, we need to bind the login object. So that is with this. Correct? Now, once we do the login, we need to redirect it also. So where we should redirect? So let's go to the route. We will redirect to the home component. So our layout component will load. We will have a navbar and the home component will load. So to navigate back to the another component from your .ts, again, we have to create an instance of router service. So router, and here we will inject router like this. So once API call is success, this .router navigate by URL, and we need to pass the URL, that is home. And while redirection, we need to store this also. What is the logged in user? We need to store that into our local storage or session store. Somewhere in the application and the browser level, we need to store like which is the logged in user. So we will use session storage or local storage. You can use anything based on the requirement. You will use it. Set item. Mm, we will give a name like budget user, and the value will be now. While storing the data into the local storage in the login API, you will get the whole object. So while storing the data, you cannot store the object format data into local storage or session storage. We need to convert it back to the string format. So JSON dot stringify method we use, which will be helpful to convert the data. So res dot data property is there. In this data property, we will get the object. So let's just save all and let's try to log in now. So Rahul was the username 111222. Let's try the wrong password first. We will see like if it is working the vice versa or also or not. In the surveys, here I will add the debugger. Let's click on login. So in the login object, you can see we are passing the wrong password. Let's continue. So now in the result, you got it false, and in the message, you will get the error. That is the user ID password is wrong. Let's try the correct password now. 111222. Login. Continue. So now you can see we have got it true, and in the result, you will get the data also. You can see all the user data, whichever the data we use while registration, that data we have got. So that only we are storing to the local storage, session storage, and we are navigating to the home. So you can see we have successfully navigated to the home component. Why home component is looking like this? Let's check. I think because over here I have added this. No. Let's check why it is looking like this. In the layout component, nothing is there. Router outlet. This was a layout component. Let's add a container. Save now. Still why it is looking like this. Body taking complete app. Why uproot is taking like this space only? Let me just check this quickly. So in body CSS, we had the display grid. So if we remove that, now it is working fine. So let's remove that. Where it was. Okay. So let's save. Now you can see we have got the complete proper nav bar. Now, next thing is like, if you see the UI, we should have three buttons, and on three buttons, we are not actually going to redirect. On the three buttons, we are just going to render the particular component. So for this is nothing but what do we say, bootstrap button group. So let's just use that. Let me just inspect and get that code. So this is that code. Let's get this. Now, this we have to put it into our home component because that is the actual route. So now in home component, we will put it over here like this. Let's save and check if we are able to see. Yes. Now here on click of dashboard, we need to render the dashboard component at the bottom. On click of expense, dash expense, and on click of income. At a time, only one component will be rendered. So we need to store that like where we user has clicked also. So once user clicked on any tab, we need to save that also. So selected tab, data type string. By default, let's say dashboard. By default, also we need to select one tab now. So for that, I'm assigning the value to dashboard. Now this on click of it. So this was a JavaScript code. So let me just remove that with the round bracket, click event. And here change tab function. And here we will pass the value. So this will be dashboard. So we on the three buttons, we will use the same function, just the value will be enough, different. So now we have to create this function. Whatever the value we get, that we will store into our this variable. So this dot selected tab is equal to parameter data type string, whatever the tab name we get, that we will store it over here. And this tab name. Now, wherever users select, that will be stored into this variable. But once we click on the particular button, that particular button should have some color to make it like it is active. So for that, we will use we need to add a dynamic class now. So again, to add a dynamic class, we have to make use of the ng style. Ng style again will come from a common module, so we have to import that. But we are trying to avoid the common module so that our component code won't be complicated or it will be lightweight. Correct. So now instead of this, we will use the property binding that will be using class. So now condition. So if this variable equal to has the value expense, this is the condition. Sorry, in a single quote. If this condition gets true, we will add this class, otherwise this class. So btn hyphen success class, otherwise btn primary class we will add it. So this is how you are adding a dynamic class. This is property binding. Class is nothing but a property of an element. No? So we can use property binding. So condition is this. If this condition gets true, this class will vary, otherwise this class. So let's copy. Let's remove this. Just we have to change the condition now. In case of dashboard, it will compare with dashboard, and in case of income. Now let's just save and check if we are getting that button selected. So by default, we put that variable value dashboard, so dashboard is coming. See, wherever I'm clicking, that variable is getting that button is getting selected. So now we know which variable, which tab is currently active. So now we have three components: dashboard, home, and expense. So that we need to display at the bottom over here. Let's create a row. Dot call where. Now three components, that is dashboard. So let's use app hyphen dash. Let's get the selector from component itself. Now in home component, I'm going to use the dashboard component, but all the component in Angular 17 are standalone. So if we have to use one component into another, so we have to import that component over here. So in our import statement, dashboard component we have to import, just like that. Expense also we are going to need, just like that. Income also we are going to need. So three components we have imported. Now just like this, expense, and just like that, income will also there. But while rendering this, we need to add a condition. If selected tab is dashboard, then only we need to render this. If selected tab is express, then only we need to render this. So here we can make use of ng if, because conditional rendering we have to do. Again, with Angular 17, if we have to use ng if, we have to add the common module. So to avoid that, we will use control close statement, that is at the rate if. So condition will be this only. So if in this variable we have dashboard, we will render this selector. Then else if at the rate else if. Why it's not suggesting at the rate else if? Yeah. And condition will be second one. If it is expense, we will load the expense selector. Let's copy. And third will be with income. So if any of the condition matches, that component will be rendered. Let's put it over here and let's check it also. Why it is still giving error? Okay, home component was not saved. So let's check. So by default, you can see dashboard is visible. Correct? Now if I click on expense, expense is visible. If I click on income, income is visible. So basic our UI code is ready. Now we have to integrate one by one API call. Whatever you are saying over here, all it is static only, but this all data should come from the API. So first we will target the income thing. Now on click of add, we have to open that model pop-up. So in income component, let's close everything. Now in income component in HTML, I have that model pop-up ready over here. But this model pop-up we need to open on that button click. So let's create a function on that add new thing. So click open model. Now let's create this function. So we are going to open the model pop-up by using document.getElement by ID. If you know how you can use the view child, please use that. But just to keep a project very simple, I'm using this way, constant model. So what we are trying to do, we are trying to get the access of that particular element by using document.getElement by ID. And we need to pass the ID of that model. Let's get the ID. ID was my model. So let's get it and put it over here. So here we will get the reference of that particular DOM object. We just need to add a null check also. So model not equal to null. Then if model is not equal to null, we are just going to add equal to block. So if we say block, that model pop-up will be visible. Just like this, we need the close function also. Close model. Instead of block, it will be none now. And this function we have to call, this function we have already called, and this close model we have to call in the model pop-up. Here also we need to call it. And at the bottom also we have close button. So here also we need to call it. Like this. So let's test it if properly it is opening or not. So income type. On click of add new, you can see model pop-up is opening. If I close, it is closing. Here also it is closing. Correct? Now, let me just explain the API a little bit. So there are two types of transaction. One is income and one is expense. So for that, I have created an API. So if you see this API, I have not provided the CRUD operation, only get operation is there. So it has only two objects, master ID, master for, and the master name, and the master ID, master for, master name. So here you can see we are getting income and expense. So now we have to call this API because this ID, master ID, you need to pass it when you are creating a transaction. So here you can see for adding an income and adding an expense, we have just only one API, that is add transaction. But how we are going to know like this is an income or an expense? By this transaction type ID. So whatever the transaction type ID, income or expense you get from the API, that you need to pass it over here. Correct? So we need to call this API. So let's copy the method name. Let's go to our service then. Again, we decided like we will keep a single service only. Get transaction type function. This doesn't have any parameter. So return this dot, what we can say, sorry, http dot get, then we need to pass our URL. Just like this, let me just copy paste. And this was the method name. No, this was the method name. Let's copy, let's paste it over here. So this function is responsible to call this API. Now where we should make this API call? So if you see, this is our home component, overall parent. So in the parent component, we will create that API call and we will pass an input to this component because in the parent component, home component, we are using the selector of expense and income. So we can pass the parameter. So we will make use of the input also. So that topic will also get covered. So again, whenever we are appearing for the machine test now, they want to check your knowledge, like you know all the topics or not. Do you know the use of input and output or not? So while practicing also now, try to divide your logic into various components so you can make use of input and output. Now let's go over there. So in home component, I will actually make this API call. So in home component, again, we need to create a service of master. We will make use of inject master service like this. Now let's create a function get transaction type. Now on the page load we need to do that. So we will need on init lifecycle event. We have to implement it. And once we implement it, it will ask to implement the ng on it function as well. And this function we will call it on the page load. like this. Now from over here, we are going to make the API call. So this dot master service dot which API call? Get transaction type. Result colon any. Whatever the response we get, that we need to store it also. So let's create one other variable. Transaction list colon any. It is going to be array. So any of array. Whatever the response we get from that API call, we are going to store into this. So this dot transaction list is equal to res dot data. It's giving error. Let's check what did we do wrong. Oh, we forgot subscribe. Dot subscribe like that. Correct. So whatever the data we are getting from this API, we are going to store that. So here, if you see, we got to know like we need to find master ID with income, like what is the master ID for income, and this we need to pass to our child component, just like expense also. So this income and expense, we will first filter it out. So I will create two instances, income master ID. Now here you can see we will use another thing. We are going to filter the data now, and expense master ID. And this variable we are going to pass as a input. But first we need to get the ID from our array. So once we get it, here we need to write the code. So constant, what do we say? Income is equal to, we need to filter it out from this object, transaction list dot find. We need to find only one record. So whenever we have to find single record, we go with find. When we have to find the multiple record, we go with filter. Master m equal to m dot. So with what we need to compare? We need to compare with master name, where master name equal to we need to income, right? So this income value we need to pass it over here. So here we will get the object, and from that object we will store the value to this income master ID. Again, here you need to add an if statement. Whenever you are using the find now, if this gets the record, you will get it record. But if it doesn't find the matching record, you will get undefined. So this you need to add it over here so that it will be a undefined check. Whatever the ID you get, that you need to assign it over here. Income dot. What you need? Master ID. So this is the master ID. I know this is kind of a critical thing why you should do this, but API is written like that, so you need to write it. Let's copy this code again, and instead of income, and try like this, you are going to explore so many things, how you filter and everything. If it is a very straightforward, so what is the way to do the multiple projects? No? You need to have something proper. Instead of master, now it will be expense ID. So on the page load, we are going to get the income master ID and expense master ID also. Now this we need to pass as an input to our child component. So here, these are the two components. So now in this component, we need to first create the input. So here, let's create at the rate input. So input we create to pass the data. Master ID, data type string is equal to, by default, let's initialize with 0. Let's add the input. Why it is giving error? Sorry, input is no string. We need a number, right? So number. So this is how we create the input. Just like that, in the income component also we will create it. This input we need to add it over here. So both the function, so both the component in income and the expense have now input created already. Now we just need to pass it from the home component. So here, so how do we pass it? By using square bracket as a property binding. And this is an expense. So what do we need to pass it over here? Expense master ID. This we need to pass it over here. Let's copy. For the income, we have to pass the another variable, that is income master ID. Correct. So in both the component, we will get the master ID. Now, let's close everything. Now in income component, we will get the master ID over here. Now coming back to this, let's check the object for creating transaction. So this is the object. So let's copy. Let's create the object over here now. Transaction obj colon any equal to these other things, correct? Now this transaction ID we are going to get as an input. So what we can do is while saving the object now, we will just update it. This master ID should be assigned it over here, but we will do that once we click on the save. Now, user ID. So from where we are going to use the user ID from the session storage, because logged in user ID we need to pass, correct? That we have already stored in the session storage. Now in the UI, what we need to bind date, category, and the amount. Let me show you the object. So category ID. Now, what is the category ID? Like what type of the transaction you are doing? So category ID, you will get it from the here. Get all. Oh, we didn't create the categories also. First, we should have created the category. Let me just add it from the backend. So you need to complete the CRUD operation of category also. I forgot that. So with this, you can add one more tab and you will complete the category CRUD also, because whatever the logged in user is there now, for logged in user, you need to create the categories. So let's check the logged in user data. So if you can see for the user ID, this is the category table. So So I didn't created the CRUD API means we are not targeting the CRUD operation in the Angular for category. But for Rahul, we have created one user with Rahul. The user ID was 4. So I have created 5 categories and I have provided the user ID, right? Now, so in Swagger, we have one API that is get category by user ID. So let's try out the logged in user ID is 4. So see, we are getting the 4. What are the categories created by 4 user that we are getting? Now, this we have to bind over here, select category, whatever the category, this is a static dropdown. But on the on the income component, we need to show the categories dropdown. But again, like income, we know like this is an income. So here you can see income is like, again, I should add one column based on the transaction type. This category should be there because the income glossary cannot be the income. Rent can be income. But let's show these things. So whatever the categories we have, that we need to bind it over here. So this is the API call. So let's create this API call first in our service. So every time, like all the API call we are keeping into service only. So let's create this function. This function is going to have a parameter logged in user ID. So simply a return statement. Now this will be my API call. So let's copy and let's paste it over here. So after 4, we need to bind the ID. So dollar curly bracket and whatever the ID we get, that we will pass it over here. So our URL will be dynamic created properly. Let's make it small. So in service, we have created function. Now in the income component on the page load, we need to call the API call. So again, page load. So on init, we need to call. We have to implement it also. Once we implement, it will ask us to create that ng on init event. Let's create the function call get category by user. Now here we need to send the logged in user ID. So where do we have the logged in user ID? While in the login component, once we log in, we store that the login information into our session storage. So we need to read that. So we will read that data in ng on init only, or constructor, we will read that. Let's create a constructor. So constant logged user is equal to session storage dot get item. So while storing the data into local session storage, we have stored it into budget user key. So by using this only, we can read it. We need to pass it. and we need to add a null check if logged user data not equal to null. Now here, so if it is not null, and again remember, like while storing, we have stored the data into string format. Now again we need to retrieve it. So again we need to retrieve it, convert it back to the object format. So we have to make use of, let's create a variable also, or this is the variable where we are going to need the user ID. So here only we will store. So this dot transaction object dot user ID is equal to, we need to convert it back. So JSON dot parse is the method. So JSON dot parse method, which we have to send the logged in object. So whatever the object we have got over here, that will be converted to object dot user ID. From that object, we are trying to read the user ID, and that we are storing it over here. Now, here we need to make that API call. So this dot master service, we didn't create the object. Let's create the object again. Master service colon, sorry, is equal to inject round bracket, and we have to pass the master service. Then here master service dot, which method we have to call? Get category by user ID, and this function needs a parameter. Now where we have stored the logged in user ID? In this object, see? So this we can pass it over here as a parameter. And whatever the data we get, we need to subscribe that, and we will store it into a variable. Let's create a variable, category list colon any. It is going to be array of objects, so that's why creating like this. And we need to store it over. So this dot category list is equal to res dot data, like this. Correct? Now, because in the response, data is the property where we get it. Instead of doing this, if you know the async, please use async to cache the data. Now, so whatever the response we get, that we are storing it over here. This we need to bind dynamically over here. Again, if normally we have to iterate the element. So to iterate the element, we make use of the structural directive, that is ng-for. But again, if we have to use the ng-for in the import section, we have to add the common module. So to avoid that, we will use @for. That is the control flow statement we have. And here we need to pass the array. And whatever the element you want to iterate, that will go inside this. So over here, value item dot. What we need to bind? Let's check the API response. Category ID we will bind to the value, and value this category name we will display it over here. So item dot category name. This we have to display. Let's remove this. Now let's save it also, and on the page load we should be able to see the categories drop down. So income, add new. Not able to see. Let's see why not. Some error is there. No. Let's go back and let's come over here. No, that API call is not happening. Oh, because on the NGONet we didn't call this function. So how the API call will trigger, no? Correct. So let's say now once we move back to the income tab, we should be able to see that API call. So see, once I move back to the income, one API call is there. We have got the response. Now if we click on add new, see whatever the item we had that are visible over here. Now, so first thing is done. Drop down we have binded from the API. Now we just need to work on the save operation. So let's get the object. We have already created the object, correct? And we need to bind the ng model now. So we have created this object. Now this object we need to bind. Again, we are going to use the ng model. So we can use forms module over here. Let's bind that. Square bracket, round bracket, ng model dot. So this is going to be common. So I will just copy paste this for now. And the amount and the purpose. Now let's just bind the remaining things. Category ID will go on the drop down. Then we have amount Amount will go over here. For amount, I have kept input type number because only number we are expecting. Then purpose we need at the text area. Purpose I have kept it as text area because long information we can put it, and the date on which date transaction has been made. Now on click of save, we need to make the API call. So let's create the API call function as well. So click on save. Let's create this function. Now in the service also again we need to add it the function. So just like this, post API is going to be there. So add new transaction. Let's get the API also. Add new transaction, try it out, execute. So this is my API function name. This we have to post it over here. So our API function is done. Now this we have to call on the function. So master service dot add new transaction, and for this we need to pass the object. So object is nothing but transaction object which we have binded to the form. And we need to subscribe colon any. As I said, result properties what you watch out for. So res dot result, if it is true, we will showcase the error. Item added success, whatever the message you want to display. And in else, we will show the error message, whatever we get from the API. So res dot message. That's it. Anything is not remaining. Yeah, one thing is remaining. So here you can see while creating the object, this transaction type ID was 0 because this we didn't bind it to the form array. And but we have got that transaction ID, transaction type ID in the master ID. So while saving, here we can just modify that object. So this dot transaction object dot transaction type ID is equal to whatever the ID, master ID for the income, that we need to pass it over here like this. Why it is giving error? Sorry, this. So our object will be completed. Let's see. Let's add a debugger and let's debug the code properly and let's try it out now. So now we should be able to create the income entry. So this is static. Okay, we have not created that thing. Now let's say I have got the salary on first. So it will be salary. Let's say amount 10,000. Salary for what is the month? May, no? Correct. Now, if we click on save, our function should trigger. Let's click on save, right? So now if you see the transaction object, amount we have got, category also we have got, date we have got, purpose we have got, transaction ID is our primary key, user ID, logged in user ID also we have got. Just the transaction type ID was not there, but that we have got in the input. See, now this we are assigning it over here. Now our transaction object is complete. Let's continue and let's check if API call is success. Yeah, so it is success. So transaction has been added. Now let's check the transaction. So we have the API get transaction by, get transaction by type ID. It should be, let's try with the user ID. User ID is 4. I think I have made the mistake. Let's check the API. That should be transaction. I get all transaction by user ID. Yeah, means two parameters should be there. User ID also and the transaction type also. Where it is, yeah. So here we need two parameters. So let me just modify the API because this API is responsible to get the transaction. If we are in the income, we need to get the income transaction. If we are in the expense, we need to get the transaction for the expenses. So it will need two parameters plus the user which is logged in. So int user ID. Now here we will add two conditions and first transaction ID, then trans dot user ID is equal to whatever the parameter we will pass, user ID, like this, right? Let me just deploy the thing again. Let me just redeploy the API. So I have redeployed the API. Now if we see get transaction by type ID, so here you can see now we have two parameters. Let's try it out. So for income, it is I think 2 and user ID was 4. Let's execute. For transaction ID 2, let's check the database again. Budget transaction. This was a 2. Category ID was 3. Okay. No. Transaction ID 1. Yeah. So here we have said 2. For income, transaction ID is 1. So here you can see we have got one transaction. So in the table, you can see so many records are there, but what we have got only once, because what we have said, like we need the transaction for transaction ID type 1 and the where user ID is equal to 4. Now this API call, we need to make it. So let's copy. Now let's go to service. We need to show the added transaction, right? So for that, we are going to make this API call. Now for this function, we are going to need two parameters, transaction ID and user ID. We need to provide the data type also. We can disable this thing where type providing is very mandatory, but let it be. So again, it's a API call normal, get API call. Now let's copy this and let's put it over here. Now here, wherever we had that, what we can say parameter, so instead of 1, we need to pass transaction type ID over here. And instead of user ID static, we need to pass our user ID parameter, whatever we get. So our API call will be properly dynamic. Whatever the value we get, that we are creating a proper API. Correct? This thing is done. Now, in the income page, on the page load also, we need to call that, because once we click on the income, we need to see the whatever the transaction we have done in the income. Correct? So get all transactions. Now this dot master service dot get all transaction by type ID, and this function needs two parameters, user ID, transaction ID, and the parameter. Transaction ID we have got it over here, that is master ID. So this will go over here as the first parameter. Second will be logged in user ID. Logged in user ID we have stored in this object. So this we can pass it over here as a second parameter. Then we can subscribe just like this. Just it over here. Now, whatever the transaction we get, that we need to store into another variable. So just like this, we will just copy paste transaction list. Let's copy, let's paste it over here. And this function we need to call on the page load also. Now on the page load, we are going to make two API calls. Now this you can either trigger once you open the model pop-up, because category list you need once you open the model pop-up only to create. So this you can put it over here. So on the page load, you normally don't need this, but you can keep it there also. Will not affect so much. But on once we open the form, then only we can make that API call. That is also proper thing. So on the page load, now we are just going to make one API call to load the all the transaction. Now, whatever the transaction we get, that we are going to store it in this variable. Now we had the card, which was there static. So let's remove the card. Now this column, all three should be dynamic. So now instead of ngFor, we will make @for, and here we need to pass that array name. And this column will go inside this. Now here we will say the item dot. Let's see what things we are getting from transaction list. Category name we are getting. Let's find the category name. Then the amount. So I will keep the dollar as it is. If you want to use the rupees symbol, you can use that. Item dot, where it is amount we need to display, amount, and edit and the delete part. So let's save and check it now. So now if we navigate to income, on the page load, you can see we have that API call and only one record was there, so that we have got. But now if I click on add new, you can see another API call, because On model open, we have moved that function. So let's add another. Let's on the third, we have got rent. That is also nothing but an income. Let's say we have got 5,000 as a rent. Rent from flat. Let's click on save. Now on click of save, just pay attention. Record got created, but that is not visible at the backend because once we save again, we need to trigger that API call. Then only we will get the transaction. So this function we need to call in the success of save. So that once we create a new income, once we create an income, we will get it. And once we are done creating the income, we should close that also. So this function we will call it over here. So now in success of save, we have calling, we are showing the alert, getting the all transaction and closing the model pop-up also. So let's save and check. So here you can see 2 records of them. Let's add another one. Let's add on one only. Let's say I do some freelancing work. So from there also we got it. So let's add one more transaction category. Where it is category drop down. So I have not done the, what we can say, crowd of category, but you should do it. Okay. Freelancing work, user ID 4. So whatever the user ID, you will pass it, and you will create your separate category so that everyone is going to use this API. So when you log in, you should only see your data, not others. Now let's go back over again. Now if I click on add new, here you can see freelancing is coming. Now let's say on the first only I have got it, freelancing. Let's say I got 6,000 from freelancing. Freelance project work, like that. Let's click on save. Now if you see, once we click on save, you can see API, another record is also visible over here, and model is also got closed. So that's why, that is because of this. Correct. So our edit and the delete part I won't be taking, but I will push the code once I have got the time. Now we will move to the expense part. So this is done over here. Now we have to move to the expense. So now in expense again, same API. So for creating new income and the creating new transaction, same thing. For getting the transaction is also same thing. Same code will be there. Just the difference is the transaction ID will be different. Everything will be same. So I will just copy paste the same code again so that we won't waste our time. I wanted to make it a reusable, but again, it would have been very complex. So that's why I'm just copy pasting the code. Now we need the model pop-up as well. Same model pop-up. So this I will copy and I will paste it over here because I said like only, what do we say? Transaction ID is something different. The remaining thing is same. Now we need transaction object, category list and transaction. This also is going to be common. So I'm just copy pasting everything. It will be same only. Nothing. Let's copy the whole thing. Copy and paste it. That's it. So same code will work. No, you don't have to do anything. So either you can make use of the reusable component for form, correct? Now, so here when we are when we are rendering the expense component here, master ID we are sending for the expense, whatever we get. So let's just test it. It is not saving. Okay, so we need to import the forms model, right? So here forms model should be there. Got it. Let's check. Now just pay attention to the network tab, okay? So now if we go to the income tag first, so we are passing the transaction type ID as 1 and user ID as 4. So we have got the income. Now if we go to the expense, so here you can see transaction ID 2 we are passing. This is static, okay? But from the API call, you will see we won't get any record. See, array is empty because we have not created it yet. Now let's get rid of that static array. And instead of that, we will use our transaction list. So this. Now in expense, I don't have the card. So I have ULLI structure. This also I have copy pasted from somewhere. So now this UL should be dynamic. Instead of this, you can use your normal table also to display the record. So I was searching for something proper UI. I got it. So that's why I'm using it. Now this UL will be dynamic. So now here we need the serial number. So dollar index, we can use it over here +1 because index will start from 0. Then we need to show the transaction type. So item dot whatever we have done, same thing like that. Category name. What is the category? What is the type of expense you have done? Then amount you need to show the amount like this. Sorry, item dot amount. Again, I'm not showing the description and everything, but you can show because from API we are getting, so you can always show. So if we go to expense, see currently no record is there. Let's click on add new. Why it is not visible? Okay, so I am add new. We need to call that function now. So we forgot that. Click open model. Let's save. So expense. Now if I click on add new, model pop-up is opening. Let's say from first salary I got it. Then let's say on fifth transaction I'm adding something. Let's say I purchased the groceries. Amount is like 2000. Let's purpose monthly grocery. Whatever the expenses we are going to add, that we will add it over here as an expense. On click of save, now you can see item added success, and here you can see expenses there, grocery. Now if you go to income, you are able to see the income. So see, single, that same API is going to get us the data of both the expenses. Means only one API is there, which is going to get the record of income and the expense. Just transaction type ID we are passing. See, correct? Now, so expense is also done. Now, next thing is dashboard. So for dashboard, first like these three things, what is the budget and this thing. So for this, we have one API. Again, I'm repeating like edit and the delete part, I will complete and I will push the code in some days. But for now, if you know, that is just the basic. In all my other videos, I have already covered that. So you can just follow that. So first is like get dashboard data. So here you can see we need to pass three parameters: user ID, from date, and the to date. Because dashboard is like for which duration you need to see. So three parameter you need to send: logged in user ID, from date, and to date. So let's just try it out for 2024 01/01 up to 2025 we will try, and let's click on execute for 4 user. So here you can see total income 2021. That's because let's go to the income. So 10,000, 6,000, and 5,000, which becomes 21,000. So this is our total income. Then total expenses, we had added only one expenses, that is 2,000, and net income is 19,000, which is remaining. Correct. So whatever the data we are getting from this API, we need to display. So let's create the service form. So again, we have to go to the service. Again, I will provide some I will try to create one more video where we will try to implement the graphs, because whenever we talk about budget, so we need to see that statistical information in a graph. That will make more sense to understand. Correct. So I will try to create, I will first check like either we will use the prime ninja or any NGX graph we will use, and whatever the response we need, like day wise or category wise, I will create that event. I will put it over there so you can use it. So this API call we need to make. Let's create the function call. Now, just like this, I will just copy paste. This is the thing. Now for this function, we will need three parameters. First is like say user ID, then from date, colon date, then to date, colon date. This user ID, we will send it over here instead of this dollar user ID, just like that. Let me just copy paste. Here from date will go, and here to date will go. So dynamic URL will be there. Now let's close everything. Now we have to move to the dashboard component. So again, I'm not covering everything, I know, but you should cover delete and the edit part. Master service colon. What do we need to do? Sorry, equal to inject master service. So sometimes I get tired because I record the videos in a single go. I don't normally stop and pause and do anything. I start the Zoom recording and record in the whole go. So I also get tired. So that's why I normally skip the repeating part. Correct? Now, so on the page load, we need to make that API call. So here on init will be there. We need to implement and ng on init. Now we need to create one function get dashboard data. Let's create that. So this dot master service dot get, where it is, yeah, get dashboard data. This is the function call. Dot subscribe. Now this function call needs 3 parameters. We will come to that. Let me just write the API call. Now if you see the response, we are going to get an array, and inside that array we are going to get a single instance only. That's how my API I have written. So from array we just need to read the first data. Now in the dashboard user ID we are going to get from the local storage, session storage. But from date and to date, you are going to do read it from over here. So we need to create 2 variable that we will bind it over there. From date, let's initialize with string, just to keep single, to date, element string. We can provide a number also, but that won't make any sense. And this again forms model we have to bind. And this variable we will bind it to our date picker. Model from date variable, just like that, to date variable. And on click of search, we will make that function call. So click get, what is the function called? Get dashboard data we have already created. Correct. Now we need to read the local storage data also. So where we have read that in the expense also we have read that one. So let's just copy paste that like this. We'll put it over here. Now we don't have any object. So here we will create logged user ID colon number, by default initialized to 0. The data we will get it, we will store it over here. And now for this function, we need to pass 3 parameters. First was user ID. So user ID, we are going to pass it from here. Then this dot from date, then this dot to date. Now, why it is giving error? Okay, so let's make it date. I thought because there we have specified date, right? Let's initialize this with new date. Correct. Now the data we will get, we need to store it, right? So dashboard data colon any. Whatever the response we get, we are going to get the array. From that array, we are going to need the first object. So this dot dashboard data is equal to res dot data. It's going to be array, and the first object we are going to need. So the capital R was there. This is how you need to do it. Now this dashboard data, we need to bind it. So at the top here, budget, this dot, what are the things we are going to get? So let's say in budget, we will show anything, total income, we will show it over here. Just because label name is something not proper. Balance, net income is nothing but our balance. And the total expense, this thing will go over here. So let's save. Let's try to get the API call now. Now let's select the date. Let's say from January till today's date. Let's make it tomorrow. Correct. Now on click of search, oh, we have got four now. From date and to date doesn't pass properly. What kind of data it need? It will need like this, I think. So we will handle that. We are passing the whole date, but that is not accepting that as a date. Let's try to make it string only. It should have accepted that. Let's say in a service, we have to change the data type instead of date. Now it will be string. Let's try now. So let's say from February till tomorrow. On click of search. Now data is not there. Why it is not going? We said it saved everything, correct? Let's try again. Why date is not going? It's breaking because by default it is null. So let's add a null check. But why date is not going? Yeah, now data. Because of that HTML was breaking, now that's why it is. So now you can see we whatever the transaction date we have set. So let's set the proper date instead of from January till today. So on click of search, you can see from date we are sending properly and up to to date also. So in response, we have got it. So total budget was our 21,000. Expense we have done 2,000. Remaining is this. Correct. So now just like this, we have another API to show the category wise. So here you can see at the bottom, we have get category wise expense. Again, same data you have to pass. Just this data you need to store into us another variable and that you will display it over here in the formula. So according to the category, like in which category, how much you have paid. One more API call is there, which will get you month-wise exception. So there you need to pass the user ID in the year 2023 or whatnot. Correct? So here you will get month-wise, like in January you have spent this, February you have spent this, just like that. So you can, these are just the get API call. You can make those API call and the data you will get, you can display it over here. So I'm just skipping that part. Correct? So the basic is we have done. One more thing. Over again, we are logged in. So here you can show the log off button by reading the local session storage data. You can show the logged in username it over here. I have done the same part in any almost video. I do that, but here I'm skipping that. But once I push the code, you will get to see everything completed. Don't worry, you will have that. But in this video, I'm not explaining it. But in the repository, in let's say 2-3 days, I will work and I will push the remaining code. You will find the properly working example, and I will host it on the GitHub pages also, so you can make it. You can see the live version also. Just like that, try to implement it. It has so many scenarios. Some scenarios are left that I will post it in the GitHub, or if I got the time, I will try to create another video also. But you will have access to both of them. So till then, if you are new, please do like, subscribe and like my videos. Try to add the comment also, which will help my videos to go viral. So that's it with the current video. Thanks all.